Past and the present. The way parents remember their own school years relates to the way they participate in their child's schooling and remember his/her school years. Interesting article, and I really got into it because it deals with psychology, and you see that. Let's just go right down it and let's just look at it. The article begins with the abstract. The abstract states that respondents were a group of academically and vocationally educated fathers and mothers with an N which equals 326. In case you're not familiar with research, N would mean number of subjects. Parents with negative recollections tended to help their child to prepare for tests more frequently than parents with more positive recollections did. So this article comes down to how parents perceive a school setting and how that relates to how they deal with their child's academic success. Parents' evaluated school recollections can be seen as one potential socio-psychological factor in the chain through which the meanings of education are transferred from one generation to the next. I highlighted that part because it makes up a really good point that education is transferred from one generation to the next, but also the perception of the way education serves is also done. So for example, if your parents do not like certain groups in a school, like they would say, well, the rich kids are always getting a better education, those perceptions or those bias may also come to the next generation. The outcomes are communicated to the child in comments and explanations, which can eventually construe a more or less shared perception of how well the child fits the school and its requirements. This is in the review of literature. Thus, a negative experience can function as a motive for personally positive change. I like that article. I like that quote because that should show you something that whenever someone has a negative experience in life, they will sometimes pick themselves up and try to do better. This would also go with the generations that when a parent has a negative experience with school in their career, they may try to strive their child to have a more positive experience. We may speculate that attitudes deriving from personal educational experiences direct parents dealing with the information they obtain about their child's schooling so that, for instance, parents with positive attitudes pay proactive attention to instances that speak for the child's progress, whereas parents with negative attitudes pay attention to potential problems which they might be prone to exaggerate. So a parent with a positive experience will look at positive, proactive actions, and a parent with a negative experience tries to fix the problems as they go along. So if you want to get this in the real world, you'd say, hey, how about you go try out for the sports team because you may enjoy that. However, a parent who has negative experiences may say you need to go study for your test because you don't want to fail it, because they would understand the negatives that go around that. It's kind of like a fear of failure, a fear of something bad happening to your child. Our previous findings suggested that parental school memories are not wholly individual, but vary according to the parent's social background. That is something that I saw that I was really amazed at when I read this article, because they start bringing into this middle class and working class family division. The middle class subjects recalled their own school days in positive terms, whereas the working class parents had more diverse experiences. Many of them had experienced hidden injuries of class, for they calmly cited instances of frustration and even humiliation, and gave contemptuous evaluations of the pretentious people who had high educational degrees. They don't really say the word socio-economic class, but they're saying the phrase social class. So we can infer from this that they're saying that parents who are in the working class or have a lower income would be going to schools and having negative memories of their schools, while the middle class has more of a positive experience. This is what the article says. It's not what I'm saying, but you definitely see that this is some pretty good research. These findings indicate that the attitude of academic parents and mothers towards their child's schooling is an effective one, and that these groups feel entitled to criticize the school when they find reason to. a competence that derives from their own high social status and their practical involvement in the child's education. So therefore, parents who are in those higher socioeconomic classes criticize the schools faster. Vocationally educated fathers who remained the most distanced from the school, as this group displayed the least satisfaction with the quality of the instruction, assessment, and their own chances of influencing them. So the working class father would be more withdrawn from the school. How the parents remembered their child's past school years, representing an evaluative referent of their educational attitude, and how frequently they participate in their child's schooling, representing a behavior referent of their educational attitude. So not only do parents who have negative attitudes about schools continue to pass that from one generation to the next, but we also see an issue of parental involvement comes into play. So when parents have negative attitudes, they also sometimes will pull themselves away from even being involved in the school. This next section talks about the method, talks about how they sampled the 326 people, talks about the questionnaire, and then it goes into analysis of the data, which was very statistical, which there's no sense in going into it because we can just look at the results section. The results section breaks it down on a mathematical statistical analysis, so I skipped over that. I got into the discussion section. The main finding of our study is that parents' school memories do indeed contribute to the way they selectively remember their child's school years and support the child's schooling. However, we also found that these memories operate in interaction with the parent's education and gender rather than directly. So a parent's memories of the way they had their school is also the memory that they have of their child's school. So for example, if I had really bad memories of my school, then I'm going to start bringing those up as well in my child. So it's the way you perceive your child's education. It seems then that parents' own school recollections tend to make a difference, particularly with those groups that are the furthest from the schools socio-psychologically. So that means parents who do not involve themselves in the school because they feel like they're in the working class, they have negative views, then those views are also going to hurt them. So it's a disconnect that ultimately hurts the child. There is research evidence to show that peer popularity and acceptance in the classroom depend on the parents' social standing. So that the pupils coming from the higher strata are usually the most popular ones in the class, and also do the best both academically and socially. I saw that and I had to highlight it. I was like, man, that's amazing. So parents who have a higher social economic status come in and their child. So I guess that the rich kids, that whole idea of the rich kids. At the beginning of school, the relationships amongst the pupils seem to convey important information, particularly to vocationally educated parents, on how the child is socially adapting to the school, which is, after all, a culturally middle-class institution. Consequently, the parents' own school experiences serve as a standard for the interpretation of that information. So look at it as a coffee filter, that when a child has an experience in the school, whether it be positive or negative, it then goes through the filter of that parent's experience with schools and then is translated from there. This again is part of the process whereby pupils with poor social backgrounds are explicitly and implicitly excluded from an education, which makes them feel they do not deserve it because they do not fit the perception of normal or an ideal student. I'll just go on a real world example. I felt that way one time. I felt that I took a history class in the history department of a University of Ole Miss, and it had about 8 graduate level history students, and I was an education teacher. I was actually teaching at the time, teaching public school. And I was in a classroom with 8 people who read, lived, and breathed history. And they wrote papers like historians. And I was just a school teacher who studied history and taught history. And I felt like I was on the outside of that. And that definitely hurt me academically. And I think they saw that. So I slid over to more of a outside of the social status. Oddly enough, I believe most of those people still don't have jobs because it's hard to get a history job, and I think I'm doing okay. So anyway, when children move on to upper primary school, they change schools, teachers, and often classmates as well, which re-actualizes the issues of relationships. So that's something that I wanted to highlight and make sure I point to you, because it says that when children switch grades, and I think we might have talked about this earlier, when children switch grades and move up to another school, such as middle school, they see that they have to redefine themselves. So this will be once again why schools are very traumatic for students whenever they have to readjust. Highly educated parents are interested in their child's specialness, which they also strive to support with their choices of schools. In contrast, less educated parents tend rather to choose the school on the basis of practical matters. The school memories of academically educated parents go back to the time when the parents did not yet have a choice of upper primary schools, and some of them might have felt they were in strange company. So you see that kind of section right there that says highly educated parents are interested in a child's specialness, and they may move their child to a special school, which some people would say a private school. While many working class, less educated, it says less educated parents, they'll put their child in based on practical matters, which would be closeness to their house or school district. The vocationally educated parents with relatively negative school recollections were inclined to see the social activity in their child's school and their own relationship with the school in less favorable light than the ones with positive recollections. So a working class vocational degree with negative images has negative images of the school. The fathers with positive memories of their own school tended in their child's first few school years to comment positively on the teacher as well as the home school cooperation, in which the teacher also played a central role. For example, in the child's ninth grade, the parents' positive school memories were associated with positive comments on the child's attitude towards schools. So does that change? And it says in the next line right here, this significant observation was facilitated then by the parents' school memories, which had not faded. So therefore, the parents' memories of their own school continue to influence the way they see their child's school, and it never goes away. This study does not talk about how the child perceives their school. So let me make this very clear. If a parent has a negative image of a school and that child is in ninth grade, and the parent says, well, I don't like this school's not doing well, does the child leave that school with a negative image of that school, or do they just filter out what their parents are saying? This study does not mention that. The article continues on. We made the important observation in our study that school memories are not just echoes or scars, but get their significance from the parent's actual situation in which negative things can turn positive. So these are not just embedded forever. These do change, and however they're amplified when something bad happens or something good happens. A very interesting article. Hopefully you liked it, but it shows how perceptions are a big thing, and when you're teaching schools, especially middle schools and high schools, these perceptions can be amplified. So the purpose of this article was to look beyond just what's the child going through, but you see how the parents can influence that. So the homework assignment, which will spawn off of this, will be very simple. Do you agree with this article? Very simple questions, and we'll make a Word document for that. Do you agree with this? And if you want to tie in some of your own personal recollections, you can. Thank you for listening.